Hi, everyone. Welcome to the What's With Healthcare podcast number 16 for this series. And we're still on that head-to-toe journey in healthcare, and we're still quite high up here in the head region, and we're talking about the thyroid today. So we've got lots of, interesting things about the thyroid, and Isabel's going to walk us through all that because we've got Isabel back. She's, been working, and she's working really hard back in Chile. So we, have to fit in with, figuring out when she can join us. So she's here today, and it's thyroid time. So thanks, Isabel. Oh, and hi, Celeste. And
Hey,
Celeste is here again. Sorry. And I'm going to hand over to Isabel to do her magic. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It's really glad I'm really glad to see you guys. I've been missing you a lot. And okay, let's talk about the thyroid. This is a topic that I've been seeing, a lot, because I'm working at the cancer hospital in Santiago. It's the main cancer hospital. And I've been seeing a lot of ladies like our age having their thyroid either removed or pieces of it removed because of, cancer.
Mm.
And it is a topic that, because I've been seeing these people like almost every day, I'm feeling like, okay, let's talk about it and, try to look after ourselves, so we can detect things like that when at the right time. Okay, so what is the thyroid? The thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland that is here on the neck, and it is wrapped around the trachea, this little tube here, and it's just below the Adam's apple. We know that it has two major hormones, okay, T3 and T4. I'm not going to say the name of T3. I'm just going to put a slide up there because I can't say it. There's no way.
People can read along at home, Isabel. It's fine.
That's right. I tried. I did, but there is no way I can say that word. And then T4 is a thyroxine. Is that correct? Yeah.
The roxine.
Okay.
It's the roxine, like however, it just depends on tomato,
Yeah, that's right. English from England or English from the US, right? Okay.
Yep.
Good. But the main thing is that it has secretes two hormones, and these hormones increase the body metabolic rate. That's the main thing, right? There are a few problems that can happen with with our thyroid. But before, I want to mention that in terms of the metabolism and what it regulates, we have things like appetite, digestion, the breakdown of nutrients, and the absorption of these nutrients. It also increases oxygen consumption, raises the breathing rate, okay, so our respiratory system, also the heart rate, and it produces heat. It regulates the heat and the temperature of our bodies. It also, in winter, it's more active because we need more heat, right? So it increases the metabolism so we can preserve and conserve our body, with the right temperature. I just wanted to ask you guys, do you know anyone, or have you experienced any problems with your own thyroid, or people who have experienced problems with their thyroid?
Yeah, I have to say yes. My husband actually, at the ripe old age of 30, had to get his thyroid removed due to tumour growth. So, and it was one of those really simplistic things. We were actually at work one day sitting on a park bench together. I turned to sort of chat to him and go, blah, 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 and went, what's going on with your neck? So it was a visible lump, like a goiter. So goiter being, excessive cell growth in there. And because of where the thyroid sits just below the Adam's apple, that excessive cell growth just comes out of the neck. And so I was like, what's going on with that? Like, that's, pretty gross. As a husband and wife do speak to each other in that way.
Especially when one of them's a nurse.
And he goes, yeah, I noticed that. I have to get to the doctor. Down the track, going to the doctor, and he had to actually get his thyroid removed because his thyroid had started behaving badly and was multiplying like at this phenomenal rate. And by the time he decided to even go with the surgery and do all of that, the cell tumor growth actually grew down and behind his chest wall. So it ended up being some mammoth amount of surgery to pull it all out.
Mm.
So, yeah, and so he sort of has to be on thyroxine orally as a tablet form for the rest of his life to balance his thyroid function because he doesn't have a thyroid anymore.
Wow. So I imagine, it must have been very scary at the beginning for him, and for you as well, when you saw this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it ended up being very funny. I know surgeries shouldn't be funny, but I think as nurses, we've got a bit of a black humor. And when he went to actually go to the surgery to get it out, the nurses and the doctor were having this bit of fun with him going, are you sure you're not a 60-year-old lady? Because this is what some 60-year-old ladies get. Are you sure that you're not like 60? Wait a minute. Let's just, yeah. So we were all having a bit of fun at his expense.
It is so funny because, on my slide, I have here, right, what you just said, that is more common in women, 60-year-old women.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, it is more common than what you think, right? And, and sometimes we forget about this area. We don't, because you can't really pulp much of your thyroid. So unless you have something going on that is visible or you can, pulp, then, you start thinking about it. Or when you go to the doctor, and because you are in that age bracket where you have to start, screening for certain things, then your blood test, may show something, or your, things like that when you do your regular checks.
Well, and also for me, like I can remember sometimes when I've gone to the doctor with just a bit of fatigue, a bit of tiredness, just that general sort of, bit worn out. And then they test your thyroid function just to make sure that it's not underactive. So then you've got to do your fasting blood tests and stuff to check your thyroid function tests and all that, to make sure that your thyroid's fine. And luckily for me, I've never had a problem with that. But that's where it sometimes gets picked up too, isn't it?
That's right. Absolutely right. So what's your experience, Celeste?
Well, yeah, I had a few family members that have had part of their thyroid removed, or for similar reasons as Sue's husband was. But more, it's like the underactive thyroid sneaking up on people, and just particularly friends when we've been in those busy child rearing years when you're feeling fatigued most of the time anyway, and it just slowly it's like, surely I am getting enough sleep, I think, and they take themselves off to the doctor and find out that they've got an underactive thyroid. Or a family friend a number of years ago who was diagnosed with Graves' disease. It was just slowly ebbing away because her heart rate was so slow and everything was just moving so slowly. And yeah, it was a good thing it was picked up, but it just snuck up slowly on her.
Amazing, because as you said, you start feeling slow, you start feeling fatigue, you start feeling, cold, and, your heart rate goes down and things like that. And then you go to the doctor, blood test, and, you have the diagnosis. And the diagnosis is hypothyroidism. That's the name of, an underactive thyroid. And what happened is that when the gland, the thyroid, doesn't produce enough hormones, and then that leads to a very low metabolism, and affects several systems: your respiratory system, your cardiovascular system, and things like that. And this is where we feel, and I'm just going to mention the symptoms that you just mentioned as well. You feel fatigue, you start gaining weight despite poor appetite. And that's a big problem, for women especially. You feel cold, you have intolerance to cold, your heart rate goes down, it's slow, and then you may have heavy menstrual bleeding and constipation. So those are sort of some of the symptoms. The causes are, the iodine deficiency and also Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune disease. And what it means is that, your own immune system starts attacking your thyroid, and then it gets inflamed, and then, what happens is that it starts growing as well. And you can also get a goiter as well. How you manage this? As we mentioned, you go to the doctor will run a few tests, and then you would get the results back, and they will put you on thyroid hormone replacement. So that's the main treatment. Do you know anyone with the opposite? Because we have the hypothyroidism, but we also have the hyperthyroidism.
Yeah. I actually had a good friend at work. She had hyperthyroidism, and it was progressive as well, but we noticed it sort of because we worked together a lot with her. She was our receptionist on the ward. She had been losing weight. Here's the trick sometimes is she had been trying to lose weight too, so you were kind of like, geez, you're doing this weight loss thing beautifully. And she goes, I know, it's the first time in my life I've ever found it so easy. So we were all like, yeah, you go, girl. And but then what happened was she kept losing weight, and she got to that point where you're just a bit too thin. And then she started complaining about her hair, and her hair was starting to get like brittle, and it was drying out, and it didn't matter what treatments she put in it, it just wasn't good. And then her nails were not flash, and then one day she was just at the table, and she yelled out to us and said, oh, can you come and just talk to me for a minute? Like, I feel like my heart's racing. And that's when finally we all just went, because we were a whole nursing group, of course, and we just went, oh my gosh, this is your thyroid. And so we sent, because she had the racing heart rate, we said, oh, just go down to ED and just make sure you're okay. So we took her down the 4 floors to ED and dropped her off there. And then from there, she got all the tests done. And she actually, she had hypothyroidism, but it was because of a hot spot on her thyroid. So she had to do, what's the, where you have
like
to.
an ablation or something.
Well, you have to swallow the radioactive isotope.
And then iodine,
and you. Yeah, and then you've got to be isolated by yourself so that because you're actually radioactive for a period of, a week. So, yeah. So, no, that's what happened to her. So, thank you for asking.
Oh. What about you, Celeste? Have you met anyone?
No, I can't say that I recall so much. It seems to be the slow thyroid, the underactive more so.
Yeah, well, the underactive is very common. I got a stat here. It says that 1 in 33 Australians, have hypothyroidism.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot. It is a lot of us. In my family, I have, a few aunties and my mom. So I have to look after myself. I go regularly, and every time I go to the doctor and have, for checkups, I ask to check my thyroid because I know that I have family history. So, it's common.
I wonder, I'm curious about the statistics, how much is the autoimmune Hashimoto's and how much is other cause? If that's increasing, because we're seeing way more of other autoimmune diseases over the last 20, 30 years than we ever have before.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. But I don't have this specific statistic, but it does. The source that I got here, it says that in Australia, most of them is autoimmune, is Hashimoto's disease, more than the iodine deficiency.
Yeah. We have iodized salt, don't we?
And also, all of our bread must be baked with iodine component as well. In Australia, they made it a rule because significant amount of children were suffering iodine deficiencies in Australia, so they made it a rule that all bread was made with iodine.
Yeah, and also at the supermarket, you can also get, salt with iodine.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what other foods do you think got a lot of iodine, the things that we consume usually?
Oh, now you're testing out my
That's a good
great home science.
Sushi, maybe. The wheat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, we can talk about, nutrition at some stage, for your thyroid.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be another episode. Okay, well, let's keep talking about the hyperthyroidism. And as you, Sue, your experience really summarizes what this is. And it's basically, a very hyperactive thyroid where you have too much hormones, and therefore your metabolism goes, it's faster than normal. And therefore you start feeling, symptoms of insomnia, start losing weight, despite of having a good appetite. You have heat intolerance, your heart rate, it's faster, and you can have irritability, changes in your mood as well. And also your gastrointestinal system, you can present with diarrhea and things like that because it's a bit too active.
So it's just like someone's pushed the fast forward button on every mechanism in the body.
That's right. That's right.
Wow.
Yeah, and then, the common causes is also autoimmune disease. It's most commonly caused by Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease. And it says here, because I got it written down, because of the names, because this is very difficult to pronounce. It is characterized by the presence of antibody called thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin, right? The TSI. But yeah, and the management, usually, again, you with all the symptoms, you go to your doctor because you start feeling unwell, or, as Sue's friends, symptoms with losing too much weight, the hair and all of those symptoms, you go to the doctor and they will assess with blood test, and then they will give you medications to suppress the function of the thyroid. And one of those medications is the radioactive iodine. Yeah.
Yep.
And this, medication will selectively destroy part of the gland, to diminish the function, and you can also undergo surgery to remove part of the thyroid. So those are the treatments. When you go to the doctor will, take your history, will examine with the neck with palpation, and also may send you to have a scan, of the area done, and and give you treatment, and that's pretty much, what you do with your thyroid. Yeah.
And just being living with someone who's on thyroxine, the other thing that you can do as a good family unit, if you've got someone in your family who is taking thyroxine, is sometimes notice the changes in moods, because typically you get a certain dose that you should be taking every day, but that hormone, that thyroid hormone's really it can be affected by weight loss, weight gain, all that, and how much functionality and efficacy of the drug. So if you've got someone in your house that's taking thyroxine, if you notice them speeding up more or slowing down more, you notice that they're not sleeping as well or sleeping too much, all those things of either hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism, really knowing the signs and symptoms of both sides when you live with someone with this can really just lead you to ask curious questions and go, hey, how much thyroxine are you taking at the moment? You think it's too much? Because I've just noticed you've been a little bit elevated. you know, that sort of thing. And so that can sort of just trigger you to you might go to the doctor and just get a blood test to see where your thyroid function's at with your thyroxine. So you might have to dial down the dose a bit or dial up the dose. But it's not a perfect world when you're taking a dose of thyroxine every day. You sometimes have to work a lot harder to get the dosage right. And you have to take a lot of interest in noticing your signs and symptoms a lot more to get the balance right, because in long-term thyroxine use, it can create problems with calcium absorption in your bones and all that sort of stuff. So you are at a higher risk of osteoporotic type stuff. So you really have to watch your balance a bit better, and you have to really be invested in that, your disease and also your thyroxine levels. Sorry, that's just a personal thing that I'm really passionate about, and living with someone and supporting someone who has to, use an external hormone to regulate function.
No, that's brilliant. That's brilliant because, you have the experience of living with someone who is, this is an everyday thing.
Yeah.
And, these tiny changes, as you mentioned, sometimes in weight, sometimes in, whatever can affect how the body is processing, this external hormone, basically.
Yeah. So that point you made about sleep reminded me too, because I was just like, when sleep starts going off, really good indicator that there's an imbalance, but it's just so subtle. That's why you have to really invest in noticing.
Yeah. Great. You summarized everything very well. And the thing with the calcium, it's amazing because, now I'm seeing these, ladies that I was telling you before at the beginning, at the hospital, that they have their thyroid removed. And you can see in in a few hours, they're all contracturated like this. Sometimes they get like this to the emergency department because of the calcium.
Yes.
Because of the lack of calcium.
Yeah, because when you get your thyroid removed, because your parathyroid's sitting there and they're your calcium controller. So they're so fragile. And so people get like these calcium crises. And so after, you have the surgery, calcium has to be monitored so closely that and then you'll get the patients who go, oh, my lips are really tingly, and that's like alarm bells, I have to go and quickly help them. And so you get some bloods done, realize their calcium's plummeting, and going, all right, calcium IV, let's go.
That's right.
I remember that. Thanks. You're triggering my memories, Isabel. I'm going, oh, that's right, we had to think about that as well.
Well, it's good. Sometimes you need to refresh a few things, right?
Yeah, the tingly fingers, the tingly lips. I'm remembering now. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this episode and you have learned and refreshed, knowledge of the things that we sometimes have to deal with every day, having a family members or sometimes yourself, suffering from some problems with your thyroid. So I hope this helps.
Thanks everyone for listening with us today. If you like what you've heard, then give us a like on YouTube, or if you have other suggestions for further podcasts, we'd love to hear them as we're progressing through the head to toe of healthcare, or if you have any other subjects that you'd like us to delve into, we're always keen to hear suggestions. And if you can subscribe and share the podcast with your friends and family as well. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye.